Deadlifting and low back pain. It affects a lot of us, so let's talk about why and how to fix it. The deadlift is a great exercise to build up low back strength, the glutes, the hamstrings, and any of that posterior chain you want to build. It has a place in almost every single strength conditioning routine, or if you just want to look better and feel better. But to be able to maximize its effects, let's take a look at what causes injury during it and how to avoid those areas. The injuries caused by the deadlift are usually located in the lumbopelvic region. It means around the low back or around the hip area. The incidence of injury is not actually that high. In this research study done in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, we see that it's very similar when you compare weightlifting injuries and powerlifting injuries. But overall, the injuries you get during these sports of weightlifting and powerlifting are less than other contact sports like football, basketball, and soccer. So just by weightlifting, you're not putting yourself at a higher risk of injury. So if someone's told you that, show them this research article and they'll see that the incidence of injury is lower. The biomechanics of the deadlift are really, really important to understand if you want to maximize how much weight you're lifting while doing it in the most efficient and safest way possible. When you look at the low back as a structure, it's multiple bones stacked on top of each other. When multiple bones are stacked on top of each other, this structure is made to handle more compression loads more so than shearing loads. Meaning that if you stack a weight on top of blocks, it'll be much more built to handle that compared to if you lean the blocks over and then push them along their back. Luckily for us as humans, we have muscles to support weight that we put during a shearing force, which is what we get during a deadlift. That's why when we start deadlifting, we start with lighter weights and then we start building up our strength and our body can handle it better. But overall, the spine is much better equipped at handling compression forces than shearing forces. You have to understand though, when you have pain, it doesn't always mean you're necessarily injured. Pain is something we get when a body's asking for something to change. Not necessarily that you're having an injury occurring at that moment. For example, think about when you are cooking something in the morning, say some French toast or some pancakes on a hot pan, and you accidentally touch that pan. You bring your hand back really quickly and it hurts, that's why you pull it back, but you look down on your hand and there's no real burn there. Right? That was a warning signal from your body saying, hey, get your hand off the pan before something bad happens. So don't always think when you have pain, you're broken, you're fragile. Sometimes it's just our body's way of telling us something needs to change. So we're going to talk about 3 different things that can cause extra stress on the low back during a deadlift that you may not even know is occurring, and how we can fix these things. First, let's talk about the setup. So with the setup, we want to make sure that our hips aren't too low when we set up. Remember, we're performing a deadlift and not a squat. What'll happen if you put your hips too low is as soon as you try to pull that bar up, either you'll be squatting that bar, hitting the muscles that you don't want to hit, or 2, what'll happen is your hips will rise up super fast and you'll do what we call a stripper's deadlift, where the hips rise up fast and then the back rises up after. Not necessarily a completely bad pattern, but you can put some stress on the low back that you weren't expecting because you go from an upright position to a very forward leaning over position really quickly that your body might not be ready for. What we can do instead is set up with our hips a little bit higher anyways, because that's our strongest position. The reason why when our hips start low and they end up high, shoot up high really fast, is our body's trying to find that position anyway. So why not just start there? Second, the bar is too far in front of you. When you're performing a deadlift, ideally we want that bar as close to us as possible. There's a reason why a lot of powerlifters that lift a lot of heavy weight will have scratches up and down their shin from that bar. They're trying to keep it as close to them as possible. Think about it this way. If you're carrying a laundry basket full of clothes, do you want that laundry basket carrying really far in front of you or right up against your body? It'll be way easier the closer that basket is to you. So going back to the deadlift, what we want is when we look down at the bar, we don't want to see that bar in line with our toes. We want to see it about 1 inch to 2 inches away from our shin, right over top of what we call the midfoot. The midfoot is the part of our foot, when you look at the inside arch of our foot, it's where that peak of that arch is. So you want that bar lined up there. Keep your lats engaged to keep the bar close to you so you can make an efficient lift and lift as much weight as possible. Third, you're pulling the weight instead of pushing it. This might be a little bit controversial. Most lifters, when they perform the deadlift, will think of it as a pull instead of a push, and they'll perform it on a pull day instead of a push day. The reason why this might contribute a little bit to your low back pain is because when you're thinking about pulling the weight off the ground, you have a higher tendency to use those lower back muscles to pull the weight off the ground. Now, the lower back muscles are always going to be engaged during a deadlift, but they shouldn't be the prime mover. The prime mover means the muscles that are going to be most responsible for moving that weight are going to be the glutes and the hamstring. Now, when you get in position and you think about pushing the ground away from you instead of pulling the weight up, what happens is this. We get a much more solid positioning of our core and much more stable positioning of our low back, so our glutes and hamstrings could do most of the work. When you set up properly with your hips at the right spot, you keep that bar close to you and you push the ground away instead of pulling the bar up, this is what the deadlift should look like. And now you're taking that undue stress away from the low back and distributing it into the areas you actually want it to get muscle growth and strength. Remember those 3 tips next time you deadlift, keep them in mind. If you like the video, then like the damn video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cool? Yeah. Okay.